When I opened the old Bible and a folded paper slipped to the floor, I thought it was just another forgotten receipt. But when I unfolded it, my breath stopped. The handwriting was familiar, and the words were chilling. If she learns the truth, end her. 7 words, written in sharp black ink, that shook the ground beneath my life. My name is Marjorie Clark. I am 78 years old, and today I want to tell you the story of how those words, instead of destroying me, set me free. In 1969, I was 29, a mother of 2, and the devoted wife of a respected man in our town of Fairview, Virginia. That Sunday afternoon, I thought I was only searching for medicine to ease a terrible migraine. Instead, I found the sentence that turned me from a quiet housewife into a woman who would no longer be silent, no longer be blind, and never again be easy to erase. Back in 1969, Fairview was the kind of place where life moved slowly, almost untouched by the bigger storms of the world. Our street was lined with tall maples, and in front of our little house, I grew rows of dahlias that neighbors often admired. From the outside, people said I had the perfect life. My husband, Thomas Clark, worked as the head accountant at the local bank. He wore pressed suits every day, shook hands firmly, and was greeted with respect wherever he went. People trusted him with their savings, and they trusted me as his wife, the woman who baked bread on Sunday mornings and brought pies to church suppers. We had 2 children. Jacob, 8 years old, already loved books more than games, and Lily, 6, could spend hours with her colored pencils, filling pages with bright worlds only she could imagine. My days were full of caring for them, keeping the home, and taking on sewing work for ladies in town. My mother had taught me that a woman should always keep a skill in her hands so she'd never be left helpless. I didn't know it then, but that piece of advice was about to save me. That Sunday, I was fighting a migraine so sharp it made the room spin. Tom had gone to the bank, saying there was urgent paperwork to finish before a large transfer coming later in the week. The children were at his mother's house, so I was alone. I remembered that Tom kept strong medicine in his office, a place he always called off limits. He said a man needed space to think, and I had always obeyed. But pain doesn't ask for permission. I slipped into the office, a room heavy with the smell of old paper and Tom's cologne. I opened the drawer, searching for the small bottle. That was when my hand brushed a row of books, and a heavy Bible tumbled down. It landed open, and from its center, a folded note fell at my feet. I bent to pick it up. The handwriting was clear. Richard Hale, the bank manager, Tom's closest friend. My eyes froze on the words, "If she learns the truth, end her." My first instinct was to put everything back exactly as it had been. I slipped the paper into the Bible, returned it to the shelf, and found the medicine. But inside, something shifted. I made a quiet promise I would not ask Tom questions. I would not confront him. If danger was real, my only chance was to stay silent, observe, and find the truth on my own. The days that followed felt like living in a play where I was both actor and audience. Outwardly, I kept everything the same: breakfast ready by 7, laundry hung neatly on the line, supper served when the clock struck 6. But inside, I had become a watcher, studying every detail that had once slipped by unnoticed. I saw how Tom locked his desk drawer whenever he left, something I had never paid attention to before. I noticed how quickly he covered papers when I entered the room, how his voice dropped to a whisper whenever the phone rang. His trips on the first Thursday of each month no longer seemed like routine business travel. They looked like pieces of a puzzle I had not yet solved. Each silence, each late arrival, each sidelong glance grew louder in my mind. Fear lived in me, but it no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it sharpened my focus. I realized I was gathering evidence without even meaning to, mental notes of a man who thought his secrets were safe. And all the while, I played the role of the quiet wife, smiling at neighbors, tucking in the children, waiting for the moment when the truth would reveal itself. A week after I found the note, I was pressing Tom's suits for his next trip when my hand brushed against something crumpled in the inner pocket. It was a receipt from a jewelry store in Richmond, a city nearly 2 hours away. The amount was staggering, triple what he gave me for running our entire household each month. The item? An engagement ring with a diamond solitaire. I stared at it, my throat dry. Tom had never given me fine jewelry. My wedding band was plain gold, nothing more. Who was the ring for? Alongside the receipt lay a small card with a Richmond address neatly written. I returned both items carefully, but I memorized the address. The following week, I told Tom I needed special fabric for a client's dress and took the bus to Richmond. On my third trip, I finally found the house, a charming white home with flower boxes and fresh paint, nothing like our modest place. A neighbor watering her garden said cheerfully, "That's where Miss Emily Porter lives, the young teacher. Such a sweet girl. She's expecting a baby, and her fiancé visits every first Thursday." I walked away with shaking hands. The ex-wife she mentioned was me. The discovery in Richmond broke something in me, but it also lit a fire. I now knew Tom had another life waiting, but I didn't yet understand the full scope. That came through a woman named Mrs. Inez Harper, the bank's new secretary. She was a widow, kind and talkative, and she often stopped to chat after Sunday service. One morning she mentioned how busy the bank had been. "Mr. Hale and your husband have been staying late. There's a huge transfer coming for the textile factory expansion. I've never seen so many documents piled up." Her words lodged deep in me. The transfer she described matched the date of Tom's next extended trip. My heart pounded as the pieces fell together. Tom and Richard weren't just planning to leave with another woman and a baby. They were preparing to vanish with $500,000 money that would cripple the factory project and harm dozens of families in our town. Suddenly, the note made perfect sense. If I learned the truth before their plan unfolded, I was expendable. I went home with my basket of groceries, smiling and chatting with neighbors as if nothing were wrong. But inside, I repeated the same vow: I would not be their victim. I would find proof, and I would choose my own ending. The following days turned into a silent race against time. I had 2 weeks until the scheduled transfer, 2 weeks before Tom would disappear with Emily, the baby she carried, and the stolen money. I knew I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof that no one could ignore. I remembered a strange brass key I had once seen in Tom's shaving kit. He brushed off my question, saying it belonged to an old file cabinet at the bank. Now I searched until I found it again, hidden in a hollowed-out book about business ethics. With trembling hands, I tried it on a small locked box buried behind our luggage in the closet. Inside were passports under false names, 2 ship tickets to Buenos Aires, and a stack of letters from Emily. She wrote of their baby's crib already waiting, of the life they would begin soon, and of Richard's constant reminder, "If she ever learns the truth, you know what must be done." I put everything back exactly as it was. That night, I lay beside Tom, my body still but my mind racing. He believed I was blind. He believed I was powerless. But I was already building a plan of my own, one that would keep me alive and protect my children's future. Proof in my hands was not enough. In a town like Fairview, Tom and Richard's reach went everywhere. The sheriff played cards with them. The judge was Jacob's godfather, and even the priest was too close. I needed someone from outside their circle, someone with no reason to protect them. That's when I thought of Agent Daniel Ruiz. He was a federal inspector who came twice a year to review the bank's records. Tom hated him, called himself righteous and incorruptible. Those words told me he was exactly who I needed. I prepared an envelope with copies of the most damaging documents, photographs I had taken with my small Kodak camera, and a letter explaining the scheme. But how could I deliver it without drawing attention? The inn where Ruiz always stayed was right on the square, too visible. The solution came through Lily. She had befriended Marietta, the innkeeper's daughter. I arranged a playdate, bringing cookies and a small purse I had borrowed to measure the strap. Later, when I returned the purse, the envelope was hidden in the lining. Alongside it, a note: "Please give this to Mr. Ruiz when he arrives. Do not mention my name." My hands shook, but my resolve did not. I had passed the point of no return. The morning of the transfer dawned bright, with a sky so blue it seemed almost cruel. I packed Jacob and Lily's school lunches, tied Lily's ribbons, and kissed their cheeks as if it were any other day. But inside, every tick of the clock was thunder. By afternoon, word began to spread. Mrs. Harper, the secretary, stopped at my house under the excuse of a fitting. While I pinned her hem, she whispered, "Federal agents are at the bank. Mr. Ruiz asked for every record from the last 6 months. Your husband looks pale as chalk. Richard hasn't come out of his office." My hands kept sewing, but my heart pounded so loudly I thought she could hear it. I knew the moment had come. At sunset, sirens pierced the quiet town. 3 black cars sped past my window, heading toward the bank. I held the kitchen counter to steady myself. Half an hour later, sharp knocks rattled my door. It was Lucille, Tom's sister, breathless and wide-eyed. "Marjorie, they've been arrested. Tom and Richard caught trying to divert the transfer money. The whole town is in the square." I covered my mouth, feigning shock. Inside, a tide of relief and grief collided. The man I had trusted was gone, exposed before everyone. Yet my children still had their mother and I still had my life. 3 days later, I boarded a 5 a.m. bus to Washington, D.C., summoned to give a statement. I wore a gray dress I had sewn myself, crisp and simple, because I wanted to look steady even if my heart was trembling. At the police headquarters, I sat across from Agent Ruiz, a prosecutor, and a clerk. They poured coffee I could hardly swallow. "Mrs. Clark," Ruiz began, "you are not accused of anything. We need to understand how long this scheme has been running." For hours, they asked questions about Tom's late nights, his trips, Richard's role. I answered carefully, sharing what I had observed, but never admitting that I was the one who sent the envelope. Some secrets were better left in shadow. When I asked about the consequences, the prosecutor adjusted his glasses. "The house will likely be seized. It was financed through the bank. Your husband faces at least 8 years in prison. Mr. Hale even longer." I pressed my hands together to keep them from shaking. Then came the hardest truth. Ruiz said quietly, "There is also Miss Emily Porter. She is 7 months pregnant. She denies knowing about the theft, says she believed Tom was divorcing you. Unless proof ties her to the fraud, she will not be charged." I lowered my eyes. Betrayal still burned, but for the first time I also felt a strange sympathy. She too had been lied to, just in a different way. After the interrogations, life in Fairview became unbearable. Neighbors whispered when I passed, some with pity, others with suspicion. The house I had scrubbed and polished for a decade no longer belonged to us. A notice arrived. We had 30 days to leave. I gathered Jacob and Lily at the kitchen table. "Daddy made choices that were wrong," I said gently. "Because of that, we'll be moving to another city. But I promise we will be together, and we will be safe." Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. Jacob, older, nodded slowly, already carrying more than a child should. Friends revealed themselves in unexpected ways. Some avoided me, afraid of scandal. Others stepped forward bringing groceries, offering small sewing jobs, slipping coins into my hand after church. From the scraps of kindness, I began to build courage. I wrote to Louise Bennett, a childhood friend who lived in Washington, D.C. She owned a small sewing studio. Her reply was simple, "Come. There is a cot in the back room. We'll figure out the rest." On moving day, I dressed the children in their best clothes. We boarded the bus with 2 suitcases and the little savings I had hidden from my sewing work. As Fairview's streets disappeared behind us, I felt both grief and relief. The life I had known was over. A new one, uncertain but mine to shape, was beginning. In Washington, we settled into the tiny back room of Louise's studio. It wasn't much, just one bed for the 3 of us and a small wardrobe, but it was safe. I worked long hours sewing hems and altering dresses, saving every spare dollar. Slowly, life began to take root again. Then, one rainy afternoon, a knock came at the door. Jacob opened it and called, "Mom, there's a lady with a baby." I wiped my hands and stepped into the entryway. Standing there, soaked from the storm, was Emily Porter. In her arms, a baby boy slept peacefully, unaware of the silence that followed. Emily's face was pale, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. She handed me a crumpled letter, Tom's handwriting. In it, he told her he could not support her or the child after prison. Her voice trembled. "I have nowhere else to go. I don't ask for pity, only work. I'll clean, I'll keep records, anything. Just let me earn enough to care for my son." I looked at the baby, his tiny features echoing Jacob's when he was small. He was innocent, caught in a storm he never asked for. I opened the door wider. "Come in, you're soaked, we'll find a way forward." At first, having Emily under the same roof felt like living beside a wound that hadn't healed. She avoided my eyes, always whispering thanks for the smallest kindness. But little by little, necessity shaped us into something more than reluctant companions. Emily had a natural gift for order. Within days, she had reorganized Louise's studio, creating neat ledgers for clients, scheduling fittings, and making sure every bill was paid on time. That freed me to focus on design and stitching. Orders grew, word spread. Soon, we weren't just altering old dresses, we were creating new ones. The children adapted quicker than I imagined. Lily delighted in helping Emily with the baby, rocking his cradle or singing to him in her sweet, off-key voice. Jacob, serious as ever, took on small errands and sometimes sat with Emily's son while she worked. Slowly, our home filled with a rhythm that felt less like scandal and more like survival. We saved enough to rent a modest apartment of our own, a narrow place with peeling paint, but it belonged to us. I sewed curtains from leftover fabric and Jacob painted the walls. For the first time since Fairview, I felt like we were building not just shelter but a life one we had chosen for ourselves. 2 years passed before I saw another ghost from Fairview. It was a winter afternoon, and I was finishing a dress when the studio bell rang. Standing in the doorway was Richard Hale, the man whose handwriting I had recognized on that terrible note. He looked nothing like the polished banker I remembered. His suit hung loose on his thin frame, his hair already gray, his eyes sunken. He refused coffee, folding his hands as if to steady them. "I came to ask forgiveness," he said quietly. The note was Tom's idea. He feared you would discover everything. He said it was just a precaution, nothing more. I convinced myself it wasn't serious, but I was wrong. I listened without speaking, my heart steady. I had waited too long for apologies to lean on them now. "I can't erase what we almost did," he added, "but I want to live differently now." When he left, I stood at the window, watching him disappear into the crowd. His words didn't undo the past. Yet strangely, I felt lighter, because his remorse was his to carry, not mine. My burden had already been put down. It was 7 years after his arrest when Tom walked back into my life. By then, our small studio had grown into a boutique with loyal clients. One afternoon, the receptionist whispered, "Mrs. Clark, there's a man asking for you. He says he's your husband." I found him in the lobby, shoulders stooped, hair white, wearing a suit a decade out of style. He looked out of place in the bright, elegant space we had built. "I want to see Jacob and Lily," he said, voice unsteady. I studied him for a long moment. "They're nearly grown now. The choice will be theirs." He nodded, shame in his eyes. "And you?" he asked. "I'm happy despite you, not because of you," I answered. Life carried on, and the years spoke louder than any promises Tom ever made. Jacob, now a young man, devoted himself to his studies, dreaming of becoming an engineer. Lily blossomed into an artist, her sketches beginning to influence the gowns we designed. Emily's little boy, Charlie, grew up in the midst of fabric rolls and chalk lines, calling me Aunt Marjorie as naturally as if I had always been part of his world. Our boutique, once a cramped corner in Louise's studio, expanded into a true storefront. Clients came not just for alterations but for custom gowns, the kind that carried our name into social columns and wedding announcements. Emily managed the business side with steady hands while I poured myself into creation. Tom remained a distant figure. He lived modestly, working as an accountant in a small office. He sometimes appeared at graduations or birthdays, always polite, always careful not to overstep. The children decided how close they wished to be with him. And me? I no longer defined myself by what he had done. The storm that once threatened to erase me had instead carved out a new landscape. Our life was not perfect, but it was ours, built on truth, hard work, and the choice to keep going. One autumn afternoon, nearly a decade after Fairview, the studio door opened to another unexpected visitor. It was Richard Hale again, but this time not alone. Beside him stood a woman close to his age, her hand gently holding his. "This is Helena," he said, his voice low but steady. "We're engaged. She deserves a wedding dress, and everyone we asked recommended you." For a moment I could only stare. The same man whose note once promised my end now stood asking me to craft the beginning of his new life. Helena smiled shyly. "Richard has told me about his past. I know it's asking a lot, but I would be honored if you considered it." I looked at her kind eyes, then back at him, worn and humbled. The irony was sharp, but so was the truth. People change. Or they don't. All life always moves forward. "Come," I said, leading her into the fitting room. "Tell me what you imagine for your day." In that moment I realized the circle had closed. The words that once threatened to erase me had become nothing more than faded ink in someone else's story. Sometimes I still think about that slip of paper, those 7 words hidden in the pages of a Bible. They were meant to mark my ending, to silence me before I could interfere. Instead, they became the turning point of my life. That note forced me to see clearly, to step out from behind the role of obedient wife and into the truth of my own strength. It pushed me to protect my children, to build something lasting, to choose honesty over comfort. In the end, the note was not a death sentence. It was a beginning, a small, torn page that reminded me we are never powerless unless we agree to be. Looking back now, I don't share this story to stir bitterness. I share it because I believe lessons can be carried forward, even from pain. If you ever find yourself standing where I once stood, here are a few truths that kept me alive. First, document, don't duel. When something feels wrong, keep records. Quiet notes and steady proof will protect you more than shouting ever will. Second, find someone outside the circle. In my case, it was a federal inspector. For you, it might be a trusted lawyer, a counselor, or simply a friend with clear eyes. Third, protect the children's story. Tell them the truth, but in a way they can hold without breaking. Do not let them grow up carrying secrets that aren't theirs. Fourth, keep a small skill and a small cushion. The money I saved from sewing pennies at a time became our first foundation when everything else was gone. And finally, let help in. Independence is not built alone. It starts with a borrowed room, a friend who believes in you, or even a stranger who offers steady hands. Those small choices are not glamorous, but they are the bricks of survival. If you are holding your own kind of note today, whether it is a betrayal, a loss, or a painful truth, you may feel like it is the end of your story. I want you to know it isn't. Often it is the seam where one fabric ends and another begins, the place where new life is stitched together. My life was not saved by anger or by revenge, but by persistence, planning, and the courage to start over with almost nothing. What I built afterward was not perfect, but it was honest, and honesty has a way of lasting longer than lies. So if my story has kept you company today, let it also remind you that resilience is quieter than we think. It looks like steady hands, long days, and the choice to keep going even when the world crumbles. Thank you for listening. If this story spoke to you, tap like so it can reach someone else who may need it. Subscribe to The Art of Revenge for more true stories of courage and second chances. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I love picturing the kitchens, living rooms, and bus stops where these stories travel.